Iverson just missed a layup at the buzzer. Sixers lose. Who gives a crap, huh? I mean, it's just a silly game anyways. Oh, the anger sharks are swimming in my head.
You gotta dump that shit! You gotta dump that shit!
No, it's fake! It's fake! It's not real! All right, see you later! There's nobody there.
Just haven't. I'm really disappointed in the
Of course you are, Coach.
fucking progress that we've made. God damn it! Fuck this show. Take this fucking show and forget it. Forget fucking basketball.
Welcome back into the Door Report, and welcome back into episode 308 on a lovely, we can actually say seriously, Tuesday evening, March 25th, 2025. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my co-host, Trevor Hulan, aka Hack Squat, Jim Duggan. Here at the Door Report, we are presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay. Items include NFL team packs, graded cards, individual cards, and more. Shipping is always fast and free. You can find them at www.ebay.com/str/615collectibles, or you can just go to ebay.com and type 615 collectibles in the search bar. Trevor, episode 308, not our last quote-unquote basketball episode of the year, but the last recap episode of the year of a pretty incredible 2024-2025 season that ultimately ended in the round of 64 in the NCAA Tournament. Vanderbilt lost to St. Mary's in a low-scoring affair, 59-56. Me and Trevor are going to give our thoughts on that game. We've had some time to think it over, to sit here, calm our emotions. This will not be a full season recap, but I'm sure we're going to hit on some things regarding the entire season. But we're going to try to stay focused on this game.
Yes.
It's of course going to bleed over into some other things, but our full season recap will be next week because we fully want to take a step back and kind of recap from start to finish where we started, how much better this team got, and really how exciting some of these moments were throughout the season.
Yeah. I think it should be noted that we are a few days past from the Vanderbilt St. Mary's game. But if I'm being fully transparent, I still did not want to do this pod today. I came home Friday night. I saw Will on the couch, and I just look at him and I go, "Hey, man, I don't want to talk about it." And he goes, "Good. Neither do I." And I don't think we talked about – I think this is the first time we've talked about this game since Friday. Legitimately, like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, this is the first time we have given our thoughts on the game.
I've thought about it.
I've thought about it a lot.
I have not talked about it. We have talked a lot about Vanderbilt basketball, our expectations for this offseason.
Yeah.
Some moves we have already seen made by players on the roster. We've talked about that a lot. But we haven't really talked about this game because, damn, it's really painful.
It hurt.
It hurt. Because Vanderbilt was right there, had a win in their grasp. Now, Alabama was on the horizon in the round of 32, and they dismantled St. Mary's.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a clear step above St. Mary's, just like they're a clear step above Vanderbilt. But not very often can you say in the first round of the tournament, Vanderbilt had that they were just as good, if not better, than St. Mary's. On any given day, I think Vanderbilt wins 6 out of 10 matchups against St. Mary's.
That game specifically, and we'll get more into it, Vanderbilt snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory.
As we have seen often this year.
Yeah, as we have seen it, second half collapse.
You know, it's a flaw of this team.
Yes,
That's the only solace I can take is it's not like Vanderbilt just pulled a second half collapse out of their ass. This is what we've seen.
We're used to it.
Yeah, we've seen this all year. This team would have been a top 6 seed in this tournament if they didn't collapse in second halves. So there's a lot to get to, and we will look forward a little bit as well as update some people on some men's and women's basketball transfer portal discussion and controversy, you could say, that's going on.
Literally, the portal opened yesterday,
Chaos.
and it has been a hell of a past couple days for the boys here at TDR. our first ever transfer portal for any sport actually being a
part of it.
A subsidiary of Rivals. The past couple days have been crazy. That's putting it lightly.
Like really being, we're not necessarily a first source. Like I don't think that's our path,
Our forte,
but it's our first time really being a part of this and having to really keep up, not just fan keep up. There's a fan keep up portion that me and Trevor do naturally. And it's obsessive. You could call it autistic at times, but there's another level to it of like keeping up guys that are entering the portal that have been contacted by Vanderbilt and me trying to maintain a list of that. So I have a list of names. We will continue to hit on that, but right now it's just such a large list and so many players in the portal. The numbers are staggering.
I think it hit 800 this afternoon.
So I'll get this out early, and I want to discuss this more after we do the St. Mary's recap. I don't want to hit on all this in the intro, but there was a tweet put out by Travis Branham at Travis Branham _ on Twitter, and I believe this is accurate. I have no reason to think it's not. If somebody can find correct information and correct me, fine. But he tweeted, in 2023, we saw more than 175 players enter the transfer portal on day one. 2024 broke that record with 291 players entering on day one. This year, over 700 players hit the portal on day one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring that stat up again. I just want to put that in your heads as how crazy that is. I think we're hitting peak insanity of the portal. I think this will balance out at some point. It will always be chaos, as I've talked about for like 3-4 years on this podcast, but it's coming to fruition now. The perpetual free agency. It's the NFL or NBA without contracts. So
or club options
or anything. So
it's the weirdest thing.
We're going to discuss that in more detail as well after the TDR cocktail break. We actually have some Vandy Boys baseball to talk about. 4 games, 4 wins, an SEC sweep in their first SEC series victory of the year. So the Vandy Boys jumped up 8 spots.
Second SEC series.
No, first SEC series win.
Oh, series win.
I might have misspoke, but I meant SEC series win, whatever I said. Vanderbilt bumped up 8 spots in the D1 baseball ranking for number 22 to number 14. So we will quickly recap those games and give our thoughts as well. So might not be the longest episode of TDR. We've had some beefy ones lately. Next week will be beefy as we recap the whole season and have baseball. But Trevor,
I think 2 were just sad.
It is a sad one.
We're just
this one could be long. We just haven't talked about it. So it might end up our brains just want to shut this out, and we might have a lot to say. We will see.
Yeah.
But Trevor, before we go into segment 1, going to try to start out this way all the time. What's the vibe check right now? That's a complicated question at this moment.
It's tough because that loss sucks, and I'm sad that Vanderbilt lost. Whenever I look at the season as a whole, though, I'm not disappointed. In fact, I'm overjoyed. Like, they legitimately shattered expectations. And so I have to keep constantly reminding myself that first round exit is not a failure. And it's hard because I like during that game, like that was, I don't remember the last time I'd been that hurt over a Vanderbilt athletic event, like football, baseball, basketball. It's been a long time since, like, that game did something to me personally to where I was like, every now and again, and this happens actually pretty frequently, but I'm 28 years old, and this is just me going on a whole tangent. There are a lot of times to where after a Vanderbilt loss, I sit there and I'm like, okay, as a grown man, I'm 28. Like, most of my friends have kids and are married, and I don't. But I'm like, as a grown man that pays his own taxes, I am letting the result of a game played by 18 to 21-year-olds, 18 to about 23 now.
24.
18 to 24-year-olds dictate how I feel emotionally. And after the St. Mary's game, I sat there in my parents' living room and thought, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I the problem? But that's long-winded. That's just like a personal self-development journey that I'm going on at this moment.
I'll make you feel better about that in a second after you give your vibe check score.
I'll go, man, with the sweep, I'll go 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
But man, the season as a whole, like, what a magical season.
I think and obviously this will depend on what baseball does this week. They play 4 and 20. Well, we'll get to that in segment 2. They play 4 and 20 Eastern Kentucky right now. So in like 10 minutes.
Weird lineup,
yeah,
too.
Very weird lineup. Clearly, Tim Corbin is utilizing this as a test game,
Yeah.
and just assuming Vanderbilt's talent will win out regardless.
No
Brody,
Jonathan Bass,
Brody
starting.
Johnston playing shortstop. There's just some interesting stuff in that lineup.
Mancini at second.
But the vibe check's going to depend some on baseball. But I think next week you might be higher, regardless of what.
Agree,
because
I agree.
And that some of that depends on what happens in the portal. But I
Yeah.
think as distance continues to grow from that first round exit, the season as a whole, for me at least, I'm hoping it will continue to just be a success in our minds. And I think in 4 years, and in 2 years, 4 years, this season will just be an unmitigated success. There won't even be the thought of this at all. But on the thing of it letting, messing with your emotions and control those as a grown man, we talked about this in another aspect, talking about, before we started recording in one aspect. I think you have something built into you as a male, or a majority of males. Some females have it too. But you need that competition aspect in your life. And that's in that aggression, competitive spirit. It's going to come out somewhere. And I think that's where like angry people at their job come out, is they don't have that outlet with sports. It's okay to let sports ruin your mood a little bit. As long as it doesn't completely destroy your life around you, that's a healthy outlet. I would say as far as like outlets for aggression and competitive spirit, that's better than getting in bar fights on Broadway.
Well,
I would say
there's a lot more vices that are much more dangerous to your health and well-being and your family's health and well-being than just getting upset at a sport.
So is it good? No, absolutely not. Is it bad? I don't think so either. It's somewhere in between.
I'm not like throwing stuff or like punching a hole in the wall.
Sometimes.
In
my younger days.
I sit there and I'm just quiet. People are like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay."
I was sitting here watching it with 3 other people in our living room in the game, and they started talking afterwards. I just had to go up in my room, gather myself for a while. It's like I just can't be around people that don't genuinely care about it. Nothing against them.
I watched it with my dad after that game. Literally immediately after that game, me and my father sat in the living room. Me and my dad did not speak to each other for about 30 minutes. Like me and my dad did not say a word to each other. So I'm very much like my father in that aspect. That like whenever I'm upset, I'm not like, ugh. I go nonverbal. Like if I'm quiet, then you're like, ugh, he's not in a happy place.
I will go on my expletive-ridden tirade, and then I will go silent. Yeah. That's usually. But I will say, before we get to segment 1, this is a long intro, but the most disappointing result in an athletics event, without a doubt for me, is that Presbyterian game. Not in recent memory. That Presbyterian game to start 2023, 2024. That game broke. I had genuine, I won't say hope. We were still a little. I mean,
I boycotted.
We were low on Stackhouse, but it's funny how time erodes the memory a little bit of how truly miserable. Like you're talking about going nonverbal. I had my buddy in town for that game. We rode back in dead silence and immediately recorded a podcast, and you smashed the Jerry Stackhouse bobblehead. I didn't have that feeling in my gut. That was true, like, embarrassment for supporting and believing in this guy as head coach.
Yeah.
And believing that he was going to get things. And I still was not high on. We were not high on Stackhouse.
We thought it was a tournament year, though.
But we thought that we just said it's tournament or bust. They've got some pieces in place. There's no way they're losing to Presbyterian. Even if this season is a failure, they're not going to come out and win 9 games or lose to Presbyterian. And that's what we got. And so,
alas, there we were.
But we got to actually get into segment 1, Trevor. So we have a lot on deck. We'll see how long this episode is. Hopefully the audio recording comes out well, as we have a new laptop we are recording on. So
far, no lag.
So far, we are good.
The lag from last episode broke me to such an extent that I was like, I have to buy a new laptop.
But we are about to hit. Oh, shit. I got to read this. I forgot. Before we get into segment 1, we are now a part of the Rivals Publisher Network. Visit www.thedorreport.com or vanderbilt.rivals.com today and subscribe to a monthly or annual subscription and support TDR. You can use code DOORREPORT, all capital letters, no spaces, for a 30-day, no-risk free trial. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review. on iTunes. It's now time for segment 1.
Jake, what you doing?
Welcome back into episode 308 of The Door Report. Trevor, first up, we got to go into the painful first round exit for the Vanderbilt Commodores from the NCAA Tournament, a 59-56 loss to 7 seed St. Mary's. The Commodores, of course, were a 10 seed. I guess I'll just start out going through the box score, and then we can kind of go through some key plays that stick out in our minds. I don't know if we're going to talk about this for 5 minutes, if we're going to talk about it for 50 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's just, this is a painful loss. We're not doing 3 key takeaways. That was the last. No, that was the last. That was the last game of the season. So there's no takeaways. Yeah. We're just going to evaluate what we saw, give our thoughts, and then move on because it sucks. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we started this because we are fans of Vanderbilt. We're not just objective media journalists. We've never pretended to be. Mm-hmm. We try to take a step back at times and give objective opinions, but we started out as fans. That's the only reason we're here.
Started out as fans and we'll die as fans.
Yep. So Vanderbilt lost in an ugly, low-scoring battle, 59-56 to St. Mary's. At halftime, Vanderbilt was up 7 points, 29-22, and the old Achilles heel bit Vanderbilt right in the ass. A second half collapse. Vanderbilt got outscored by 10 points, 37-27 by a very experienced St. Mary's team. We gave our 3 keys to the game last week, and I think it's going to be a good idea to bring those back up and see how they played out after I read the box score here. So on the Vanderbilt side of things, we'll start out with Jason Edwards. Led the team in scoring, not surprising, but also didn't have the most efficient game. Led the team in scoring with 18 points, the only Commodore in double digits, 8 for 18 from the field, 2 for 9 from 3. 1 turnover, 3 assists, 5 rebounds. Tyler Nickel with 9 points, 3 of 8 overall, as well as 3 of 8 from behind the 3-point line. Chris Magnon with 8 points, 3 of 6 from the field. AJ Hogard with 3 points on 1 of 8 shooting, 1 of 3 from the free throw line, 4 assists, 1 turnover. Not a factor in the way we had hoped in this game.
That'll win you a lot of ball games.
Devin McLaughlin, 7 points. J.Q. Roberts played 1 minute. Jalen Carey, 15 minutes, 4 points, 2 rebounds. Tyler Tanner, 13 minutes, 3 points, 1 turnover, 1 assist. MJ Collins Jr. barely saw the court, 3 minutes out there. Grant Huffman played a very good game. I will give him credit. Stayed in his role. 4 points, 1 of 1 from the field, 1 of 2 from the free throw line, 1 steal. Then we go to the St. Mary's side. Pointed out some guys before the game that were key. Augustus Marcilionis dealt with a lot of foul trouble throughout the game. Did not have his best game, and that gave Vanderbilt a real opportunity to win this one. 4 fouls, 14 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 5 turnovers from their veteran guard. Getting to Paulius Maraskis, only 4 points from him. However, Luca Barrett, 12 points, Mitchell Saxon, 12 points, and then St. Mary's leading scorer, number 2, Jordan Ross, 15 points, 6 of 11 from the field. Overall, neither team shot the ball well. Both teams shot 40% from the field, in fact, shooting the exact same number of attempts and makes, 22 of 55 each. Both teams very similar from behind the 3-point line. Vanderbilt shot 8 of 26. That's 30.8%. St. Mary's shot 7 of 25, 28%. Vanderbilt shot 4 of 7 from the free throw line, 57%. St. Mary's shot 8 of 12, 66%. Not a lot of fouls, to be honest. Not a lot of free throws. I liked that portion, but that's also why the game was so damn low scoring. Yeah. A lot of contact was let go. And to be honest, I don't think it really benefited either team necessarily. It just was what it was. Yeah. It was kind of an SEC referee. I don't know. They didn't change up in the second half and then start calling everything. So I don't know.
They did have Terry Oglesby was on that crew and is one of the SEC foul merchants that for some reason, and kudos to him, swallowed his whistle and let them play. I do appreciate that.
As long as it's consistent.
As long as in this game they were consistent.
I'm not going to – refereeing was not an issue in this game.
It was good.
It was fine. They were consistent. That's my big issue is the inconsistency. But I read off the field goal percentages, and you're thinking they were the same / Vanderbilt slightly edged out St. Mary's. It was a tight ball game. St. Mary's dominated on the glass. Yeah. We pointed that out early that Vanderbilt had to stay even with St. Mary's. Total rebounds, St. Mary's had 41. Vanderbilt had 28, 10 offensive rebounds for St. Mary's to 5 offensive rebounds for Vanderbilt. St. Mary's dominated the glass.
Yeah,
and
they did.
that's something we both talked about. Vanderbilt had to hold their own, and they just didn't. And we can get into rotation things in a second as to why I have an issue with why that happened.
Yeah.
But Vanderbilt didn't shoot the ball well overall. Tyler Nickel got some good looks, didn't shoot poorly. 3 of 8's not atrocious,
No.
but he didn't knock down some key looks, and
Some of
he
those
wasn't
just
hot.
rimmed in and out.
And, Jason Edwards, some of them rimmed in and out. The shots just didn't really fall. A.J. Hogard played a bad game. Bad game. He was one of my keys that we have to see good Hogard, or at least average Hogard, which I consider good Hogard, for Vanderbilt to win this game. That would have been the difference. A.J. Hogard playing up to just an average level of play as the primary ball handler, Vanderbilt would have won the game. He was bad. He was bad to the point that in the last 4 minutes of that game, Mark Byington, and I'm not even going to disagree with him harshly, had A.J. Hogard on the bench and Grant Huffman on the court. Because Grant Huffman was playing incredibly better than A.J. Hogard throughout that game. It's reality. These guys are being paid now. We have to be able to be critical of individual guys. He's the highest paid player on this roster. He's making 10 times more than a majority of you listening out there, and me and Trevor, this year. He played like shit, and he played bad a majority of this season. The NIL collective did not get a good ROI on the A.J. Hogard investment.
And that's putting it lightly.
They got an incredible ROI on almost every single other player that was recruited into this program, outside of maybe Grant Huffman, Hemingway, who was hurt, and Kajani Wright, who was out out for the season. So outside of that, they hit on everyone in the portal except their highest paid guy. And it's amazing they got this far with the linchpin of their transfer portal class being a bust. To be honest, he played. He had a good game against Missouri. He had some flashes, but consistently Hogard was not good this year.
I agree. Consistently, A.J. Hogard was a bad basketball
So it's
player.
very fitting, and I want to swing it to you in a second, then we can get some takeaways. It's fitting to me that this season ended due to the same issues we saw throughout the entire body of work for Vanderbilt. Their primary ball handling point guard was not consistent scoring the ball in A.J. Hogard. When he was not playing well, it all fell on the shoulders of Jason Edwards. Jason Edwards would then have to force things, take a lot of shots. He's a volume shooter. He's not a great percentage shooter. He's a volume scorer. And then if Hogard's not on, then other guys have to be hot. Nickel's got to be hot. McLaughlin's got to be hot. Magnon's got to be hot. That just didn't. MJ Collins, that didn't happen. And so this team had a second half collapse, and Hogard didn't really perform. And that's kind of the story of why Vanderbilt lost games when they lost games this year. And they won games when that didn't happen. So, Trevor, that's kind of the initial run through. I know it was a tough loss to deal with. How are you kind of feeling? What were your takeaways throughout the game or some key plays?
I mean, my big takeaway from the game is just how poorly A.J. Hogard played. March Madness is built for guard play. I know you like to emphasize how important the bigs are.
Look at Michigan.
But I think at the end of the day, March is about guard play. It's about your backcourt. And your primary ball handler pissed down his leg. I mean, there's no other, and that's not being harsh on him. I think if you asked A.J. Hogard how he would evaluate his performance, he would say, I did not do good. Just looking at the box score, looking at the offensive possessions that he did not create, didn't create a lot of good looks for the rest of Vanderbilt. And you know what? That's been the story of the season. So it's hard to watch that game, rewatch it, and come away with key takes or takeaways from that game that we have not already reiterated all season long. And I think the primary one is that your primary ball handler did not facilitate the offense well, did not have good shot selection, and therefore you were stymied on offense. And I know probably more than anything the rebounding was a bigger key, but the way Vanderbilt got out rebounded and still only to lose by a possession. To me, it's on Hogard.
And we've given our criticism of Hogard. Now, it wasn't all on Hogard. He didn't play as many minutes as he normally did because his play wasn't good.
Yeah.
So it's not all on Hogard. So I want to move now. That's the individual criticism, whatever, box score read through, to one individual play that just sticks out in my mind. And I specifically tweeted about it, and I thought that was the moment. That's the moment they lost the game. and it's gonna sound dumb, but I had people in the room, including my friend Emmett, who can back me up on this. He was here listening to my rants. There was a moment, and I found the timestamp. At 16 minutes and 20 seconds in the second half remaining, Vanderbilt's Tyler Tanner hit a three-pointer to put Vanderbilt up 39-27. Vanderbilt then proceeded to force a turnover, a foul on St. Mary's star, you could say, Marcilionis. Took him out of the game in foul trouble. Vanderbilt was up 39-27. Vanderbilt went down, got a wide open corner three look for Devin McLaughlin. The momentum was on Vandy's side. You could feel it. It was about to turn from a game where St. Mary's is right there, needs to make a run, to like Vanderbilt's about to blow them out. Back rim for Devin McLaughlin. From that moment on, I believe St. Mary's went down and scored or got a stop on Vanderbilt. I think they got an offensive rebound after a miss, scored. And from that moment on, St. Mary's dominated the game. That was the moment. We talk about it in football a lot. The ability to step on an opponent's throat. Vanderbilt had that chance in the first 4 minutes of the second half. The usual collapses this year, Vanderbilt has a lead, and then immediately the team comes out in the second half and gets hot. That's not what happened in this one. Vanderbilt was the team that came out hot in the second half. Vanderbilt got up 12 points with the ball with a wide open three to a guy that has knocked that down pretty consistently all year. And he missed it. That was your chance to step on their throat and take the air out of that building. Vanderbilt would have had all the momentum, likely would have had to have been a timeout from St. Mary's. Their star point guard is out of the game with foul trouble. That was the moment. It didn't happen. From that moment on, St. Mary's immediately started their comeback. Just less than 4 minutes later at the 12:33 mark, it was a 6-point game. It changed that quickly. St. Mary's took over the game, and then the size just took over, and you could watch it happening slowly in front of your eyes. So that play in particular sticks out to me. It's not all in Hogard. Guys around this team didn't make plays. And when you felt the momentum shift to St. Mary's, you felt a bit of panic in the Vanderbilt team. You felt the team kind of feel like, is this happening again? And it happened.
If you could give a percentage of the blame, though, what aspect of the game would you give the majority of the blame to?
To an individual, what do you mean?
It could be an individual or it can be an aspect of the game from Vanderbilt.
So AJ Hogard also is not the one that shot 30% from behind the 3-point line on a lot of good looks.
That is valid.
So the reason Hogard's mistakes, as I've defended him a little bit, I'm not defending him in full. Like, he's been disappointing. But he's the guy that has the ball in his hands and is being asked to do things at the end of shot clocks when everything breaks down. It makes him look bad, and it does. But also, he didn't play well. There were a lot of times when Tyler Nickel early in that game and at key moments missed shots. Jason Edwards had really bad drives into the paint. Edwards has a lot of moments where he still tries to drive fully to the basket instead of pulling up and shooting a floater or shooting a mid-range. And he's trying to draw that contact. In the first 10 minutes, you could tell these refs aren't going to call that contact down low. If the guys are relatively straight up, they're not giving you that call. And he continued to try to beat his head into a wall and just trying to drive. You're 5'9". I know you're listed at 6 foot. You're 5'9". It's not going to work against a team with 7-footers. It's just not. You saw that a lot this year from Edwards, and I'm hoping he will adjust his game a bit. But what worked at North Texas is not going to work at high major basketball. The drives, his shooting's going to translate. His ability to get open is going to translate. His quickness translates. Occasionally he can't, but consistently driving in one-on-one scenarios at 5'9", without a big bag of finishing moves like Isaiah Thomas, as an example from the NBA, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're going to have to be a volume scorer. And when you look at Edwards' stats, 43% from the field, under 36% from three. He was not an efficient scorer. The analytics on him are bad. So that's the only reason. Jason Edwards doesn't get put in the same positions as Hogard. So I can't even assign a percentage to an individual player.
Oh, really?
Hogard deserves blame. Do not get me wrong. But there are other players on this roster that deserve blame as well that didn't have a great game. Just because you see 18 points doesn't mean it was a great game. Just because you see, I think Magnon played a good game, pretty good. I think Huffman played a pretty good game. I think McLaughlin was kind of not a big factor.
Yeah, I would agree with
I think Jalen Carey was not a big factor. I don't understand why I don't know why MJ Collins played 3 minutes in this matchup. I do not understand that. This felt like a matchup for MJ Collins, and he played 3 minutes.
His length would have been invaluable.
That's why I'm not putting it on a player, because yes, at the end of the day, the players are the ones on the court that played and lost the game.
Okay.
But also Mark Byington still has not learned his lesson on rotations.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at.
He's still
I was wondering if you were going.
still doing the same
where
thing.
I was getting that with the rotations. Is I was wondering how much blame would you place in the rotations. We love Mark Byington. What he's done at this Vanderbilt program has been astounding. His rotations sometimes are just bad. And I would put the percentage of the blame, I would probably go the majority of on the rotations, and then in second place, I go AJ Hoggard. I like Tyler Tanner a lot. I think he can develop into a good basketball player. What you have seen this season, I do not like him being the secondary ball handler. I just don't. I would rather, and some people might call me crazy, I would rather Jason Edwards be the secondary ball handler when AJ Hoggard's on the bench. I don't think it should be Tyler Tanner. There were so many times that he would drive into the cylinder and just kick out. Whenever he had a mismatch, he had a look, he had an angle, and it's just, whenever you have a guy like that, and that's something that I can at least appreciate about AJ Hoggard, is whenever he drives, he can be much more decisive than Tanner. Tanner, just whenever he slashes, is so indecisive, and I don't like that from a one.
Young.
And yeah, he's young, and I'm hoping that he can develop.
It's my whole issue, and we this conversation point has been lost because the team kind of took off, and you saw guys develop into their roles. What you saw from Tyler Tanner about the last – people aren't going to talk about it because I was ultimately right about it. And I didn't want to be an ass about it. But it's like all I was saying about Tanner has nothing to do with him being a player in the future. You saw what I was talking about the last 10 to 15 games of the year. He struggled.
Yeah.
He was hot at first. Then there was a scouting report out on him, and they realized we don't have to guard him outside. We can give him some space. And he kind of has tendencies, and he just hadn't had that on film. He's a freshman. You don't see a lot of guys that are not full 5-star, highly recruited guys, McDonald's All-American, that come in as freshmen as a ball handler type player and have a lot of success. And Tanner was good on the defensive end this year, and he had some flashes on offense. But there's a reason why I expected Grant Huffman and MJ Collins Jr. to take over those roles, because you saw what Grant Huffman did in this game. He was a calming presence on the floor, regardless of what you think. He's a long guy. Tyler Tanner's short. He's small. You can't have him and Edwards on the court at the same time. Byington just kept doing that. And it's like that's a mismatch when you're playing a team with this amount of length and size like St. Mary's.
I think, too, going back to MJ Collins, I don't think not just this game. I think the entirety of this season, I think the utilization of MJ Collins has been a mistake. I think he should have gotten much more playing time than he did. I think sometimes do his shots not fall? Yeah, no, they don't. But whenever you have a guy with that size, with that length, with that athleticism, you put him on the court, I think. And so just in this game, like I said, a lot of what we saw in this game is just reiterating what we've said all season long. The 5-man rotation of Grant Huffman, Tyler Tanner, MJ Collins, Chris Magnon, and either McLaughlin or Carey is and I like all those guys individually, but like as a unit on the court, that's not going to win you basketball games. And you saw them on the court all season long.
Yeah, there are certain players in this roster you just can't have on the court at the same time. And there were rotations where Huffman and Tanner and McLaughlin and Magnon were all on the court at the same time.
Yeah.
And or Carey, throw him in there. And it's just there are shot creators, there are shot makers, and Tyler Tanner's neither of those. Grant Huffman is neither of those. Jalen Carey and McLaughlin are post presences, but they're neither of those. Magnon is neither of those. He's a defensive player.
Spark plug, yeah.
He's a spark plug. So there were so many times like the fact, and there's no offense, he's transferring now. No offense. The fact J.Q. Roberts was even put on the court doesn't make sense to me. Jalen Carey and McLaughlin were not in foul trouble throughout that game.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
And J.Q. just randomly came in and played a minute in that game when he's clearly the third best post on your roster right now. That made no sense to me. It's like he was so stubborn that he's going to play these guys this way. And then for some reason he decided last minute that AJ Hoggard's just not going to play the last 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions with Byington. We're going to hit those in the season recap. There's a lot of positives, mostly positives with Mark Byington. But, of course, right now after this game, we're going to hit on the negatives.
It's like 90-10,
Yes.
85-15.
90-10.
90-10 positive to negative. And the negatives can be fixed.
The negatives can be the other part of this negative is the lack of half-court sets. In the second half, this game turned into a half-court basketball game. That's what St. Mary's wants to do. In some aspects, the first half was that. But Vanderbilt was still able to get out, get some shots, get things going in the flow, create turnovers. The second half turned into a full half-court offense, half-court defense, X's and O's matchup. Mark Byington clearly does not have great X's and O's and a great playbook of sets. He got outcoached. Yeah. His offensive scheme and his style of play and his defense, all that is fantastic. Where he's lacking, he's a relatively young head coach, his first time at a high major program. He doesn't have those go-to plays or enough of those go-to plays. Yeah. I'm sure they have sets.
I agree.
There's not enough of them. It's the part of like once it really turned into that, it's like they just kept having to repeat what they were doing, go through their same horns action, whatever they were running, Iverson cuts. And it was just the same stuff, high ball action. St. Mary's was defending it so well, and it's like they didn't have a third iteration. It was like they had number 1, number 2, and that's all we have. And St. Mary's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different sets and offensive schemes that they had. So that's I went back and watched some of the game. I haven't done a full X's and O's breakdown. I truly can't make myself do it. I just can't. I think Byington's a smart guy and will learn from that. But it was very obvious that the depth of the offensive scheme and playbook that they have is just not there right now.
I will say on a defensive front, though, one thing that I did really appreciate from Byington and the staff was coming out in the game in a zone.
Yep.
Whenever
Matchup
St. Mary's
zone.
Was clearly not
Disoriented.
ready for a zone, and they were thinking they were going to play man, and that stifled them early on. So I will say, and we weren't expecting, because Vanderbilt is not a zone team. Kudos to Byington and that staff. That was a great move.
Okay, I do want to. We can't all be negative because they did.
Because I remember.
Yes, that's great. That's
that
great.
Was sensational.
Because there are positives of this, and we're gonna. Next episode is gonna be so glowingly positive about the season that I just want to be like when we get accused of glazing that it's like no, listen to our last episode. We have criticisms and we will hit on them more, but yes, coming out of that zone disoriented St. Mary's.
It was gorgeous.
It was beautiful, and that's why Vanderbilt started out ice cold.
Yeah.
But St. Mary's did because of the defense Vanderbilt came out in, and that's the reason they had a 7-point lead at half. Now, halftime adjustments, Byington's got dominated the entire season by a majority of coaches. Is what it is. It has happened. It's undeniable. He's getting halftime adjusted to the moon right now. I don't know another way to put it. I don't want to shit on the guy. He's been incredible, but it's like it turns from being like, oh, it keeps happening to, okay, something is at fault here.
Yeah.
And it's more than just like I blame part of it on lack of depth of rotation. Part of it is that. But there's something else going on too at this point. It's like, okay, we got to figure out something at this point. And they did, and that's what ultimately cost them. So a tough 59-56 loss. Any last parting thoughts on that game before we move into the transfer portal and our overall tournament thoughts?
That last Devin McLaughlin shot to potentially tie it, I thought it was good.
I did not. I had fully lost faith.
I thought it was good.
I really mean it. Like when he missed that corner 3 when Vanderbilt was up 12, I actually fully had accepted they were going to lose. I tweeted Vanderbilt is going to lose in heartbreaking fashion, and I'm not mentally prepared for that.
So you want to know whenever I fully lost faith? It was much later, but St. Mary's was running those moving screens all game long, and I tweeted, I wish they would call that. And then whenever Devin McLaughlin got called for a moving screen, that's whenever I was like, we're losing this game. That's whenever it clicked for me.
Now, obviously, I didn't fully give up at that point, but it was this weird, surreal, having watched sports watched sports so much in my life that was like, that was the turning point of the game. And looking back, it was. And it's like, I felt it in my soul. That was the turning point. So that was the tournament loss. We've been through the round of 64. Round of 32 has also happened. St. Mary's ended up losing 80-68 to Alabama. Alabama was the superior team, as we all knew. But transfer portal opened on Monday. This is number one. That's got to change.
They have to
regulate
somehow.
No. We got to. There's regulation, and then there's number one. I don't drop the F-bomb. What the fuck is going on with the portal opening during the NCAA tournament, not just the NCAA tournament, that's a whole extended timeline. Before the round, right after the round of 32, before even close to the round of the Sweet 16, how? Like, okay,
They do it in football.
No,
before
no.
the playoffs.
Time out. I defend football.
Ooh, really?
Football is correct. Football is because these guys are having to transfer before the spring semester.
You're right.
So
you're
there's
right,
there's
yeah.
a true
Yeah,
time
you're right.
when they are still in college. There's a true timeline issue with football. There's no fixing football. Football just is what it is.
Yeah.
Basketball, there's no reason for the portal to open now. Like, that's what I just wait. You have to wait like 3 weeks. Nothing changes with spring and fall semester.
Yeah.
You can still get into summer classes.
Harris couldn't wait.
If you need to get into summer classes, you still can.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it is opening now versus just wait until after the Sweet 16 and Elite 8.
Yeah.
You don't even have to wait till after the Final Four national championship. Wait until after this weekend. Have it open that Monday.
Yeah.
1 week. This truly shows me how I'm not going to use that word, how stupid the NCAA is. People know what word I wanted to use. How stupid the NCAA is and those regulators are. And there's a reason this is turning into chaos, because you truly have dinosaurs and idiots, similar to the politicians in this country, running everything. So ignorant and out of touch with actual human motivation and what is going to happen. They've created this idiocy that we see in front of us right now.
Yeah.
They pushed it along too far, and then they opened up the floodgates, and now we're trying to put the worms back in the can.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works. This needed to be done in a more regulated fashion. It doesn't just go from they're not allowed to even get a free hamburger.
Yeah.
To
hyper regulated.
like to the point of insanity. Like even the most pro regulation are like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
To everything is on the table. No, like nothing.
Yeah.
Like that's what we've done. And we're reaping what we sowed.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're seeing. It's perpetual free agency. So on the Vanderbilt side of things, freshman guard Karis Bilal entered the transfer portal 13 minutes after, or planned to announce and announced he was going to 13 minutes after Vanderbilt lost to St. Mary's. Yeah, that was my tweet. I didn't know. And it's funny because I think a lot of
TikTok he made.
Mm-mm.
Oh, he deleted it because he got bullied on the internet. He made a TikTok and posted it last night of him in his Vanderbilt gear in the practice facility. And it was like, oh, you enter the portal 13 minutes after March Madness. And he was like, yeah, of course I did. And like people were in the comments being like, you played 0 minutes all year long. And he was responding and then he deleted the video.
I also didn't realize. So sometimes I tweet things and it's like we had this conversation as well before, kind of my comments will accidentally come off way more like an asshole than I mean for them to.
Uh-huh.
When I tweeted that, I was almost trying to defend him.
What was your tweet?
It was all. So I tweeted right after that and I said, to be fair, that's 13 more minutes than he played all season.
Yeah.
And I didn't just tweet that as a shot. I was like, I saw people in the comments and I'm like, no, he's not abandoning his team.
Yeah.
He's transferring because he didn't get playing time and he got told clearly playing time's not coming down the pipe. And he said, I'm not waiting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem with a guy like that entering at that moment. He didn't play. He redshirted. Like, so it was a slight shot, but at the same time, I was like, I saw the comments of people being really ignorant of being like, how could you do this? Like, oh, team first, huh? Like, this is what college athletics are coming to. I'm like, this is the type of guy that might have transferred with the year waiting thing. Like, this was not that situation where fans are like middle fingering from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, we all kind of expected. He came in as, I think, a 4-star guy. Tyler Tanner clearly outperformed him and took what role he was hoping to have. And Tanner's also a freshman. So we looked at that roster and said, well, they're going to have new transfer guys. The freshman in my class that also plays the exact same position, doing the same thing as me, was getting consistent minutes all year. I've got to transfer.
Yeah.
No, but I don't care. I have no problem. Same thing with, and it's different because he waited and he actually played a little bit. And shout out to him, JQ Roberts entering the portal. Have there been any negative?
That doesn't bother. No.
I think Vanderbilt's fan base, for the most part, is very kind
So
to players.
reasonable.
N-
Yes.
Now, very reasonable. J.Q. Roberts totally understand.
dude, go be great.
He will go. J.Q. Roberts is the perfect player to go transfer to a Lipscomb or a Belmont, and he's going to be really solid there. He's going to be a very solid role player at one of those places. He's never going to see the court consistently at a high major.
I agree.
He's a little undersized. He's a tweener. He doesn't have the skill set of a modern 4, but he doesn't have the height of a modern 5. And he's a very athletic guy. He's going to do great in a conference like the OVC.
A-Sun.
And ASUN's even I think he could dominate in a conference like the ASUN. OVC, I think, is I don't know. Modern days, because Belmont moved out and Murray State moved out, they're probably pretty equal.
Hey, as an Austin P and Lipscomb man myself, it's A-Sun supremacy over here.
Well, ASUN and OVC have just been swapping teams for years.
Decades.
So
Decades,
that's where
years.
Belmont went ASUN to OVC to the MVC.
Yeah, where are they now?
They're MVC with
Missouri
Valley Conference.
Who even's in
Drake.
that? Drake. That's
Drake,
right.
Murray State's a very good.
Murray State, yeah. Austin
It's
Peay's
probably
rival.
it's one of the that's one of the right below the WCC. The MVC is right below that in tier of mid-major conference.
Now I'm just trying to think of other MVC teams.
Let's look it up. You
I
got to
know
talk.
Alabama State is A-Sun.
They're not MVC.
No, that's what I was going. I think they're A-Sun.
You got to keep talking.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of MVC team.
Bradley, it's another good program.
Bradley, they were in the tournament.
No, I might be wrong.
Was there a Brad team in the tournament?
Missouri Valley. This is the TDR. Yeah, Bradley wasn't in the tournament. They're a normal tournament team, but they were not in the tournament.
Why did I think Bradley was in the tournament?
Did they?
Are they in Pennsylvania?
I have no
If
idea.
Bradley is in Pennsylvania, they were in the tournament. I'm pretty positive I watched a game.
Bradley was not in the
Bradley
tournament.
was not. There was a Brad team then, and I'm making it up.
Yeah, I don't know what they're Bryant.
Bryant.
Yeah,
Oh,
Bryant was a
my
15
bad.
seed.
Bryant,
I was like,
yeah.
no, Bradley's a traditionally good program, but they were not in the
Okay,
tournament.
I was thinking of Bryant. Yeah, who else is in there?
Northern or UNI? Is that Northern Iowa? Northern Illinois? No, it's Northern Iowa. UNI.
Northern Illinois.
I
think it's
Northern
Northern-
Iowa.
Northern Iowa. I've
Yeah,
never
they
heard
made a
such.
run in the tournament at
Northern
a point.
Iowa.
They're purple. If you saw their
Purple and gold. They're purple and gold.
look at it. You've seen
Are they
this
the
team.
Panthers?
Yes.
Okay.
They made a run, I believe, not long ago. Illinois State, they're not good.
Illinois
but
State,
yeah,
not what are they? The Redbirds?
yeah. Overall, the point is we're getting off track. The conference is pretty solid.
See, here's the thing. This is what dudes love to do. People are like, oh, dudes want money, women. No.
Yeah,
Dudes
obviously,
but dudes just want to sit around and name random mascots with their boys.
yeah,
That's
it.
all. We could literally do this pod for 3
Valpo.
hours. Valpo. Oh shoot. Hey, shout out
Indiana
to
State.
Indiana State. Oh, Larry Bird, your
Yep.
boy. The Sycamores, I believe. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yep.
Valparaiso. I forget what their mascot is.
That's a good
The
question.
Yellow Jacket? The
No,
Valparaiso
that's not
Yellow
right.
Jackets?
No.
Maybe the
Beacons.
The Beacons.
I did not
what
know
the hell
that.
is a beacon?
I have no idea.
Like a light beam?
Buddy, I don't know.
Dude, see, we could. You know what? Let's just stop talking about Vanderbilt and let's just go on.
If I get fired from my job, I hope everybody at TDR knows we'll keep up the rivals portion. Me and Trevor are going to go fully into trying to get clicks online and just talking random.
Total clickbait.
Yeah, just total clickbait, like ranking the top 10 programs and just bad, like ranking Kansas is number 1.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. Because it bothers me. Okay, I got to go on this rant now.
Before you go on it, you know the mascot for UC Santa Barbara?
No,
The Slugs, banana slugs.
that's incredible.
Yeah. Pulp Fiction. John Travolta was wearing a UC Santa Barbara
Really?
with a slug on it. Yeah, iconic. as
Also,
sin.
I did pick that as an upset, but I did say that Michigan scared me because they have height.
that was UC San Diego.
Oh shit. Well,
They are
whatever.
do you know what they are?
No.
The Aztecs.
Really?
I
Okay.
think. Don't quote me on it. I think they're the Aztecs.
I don't know what rant I was going on at this point.
How you picked Michigan over them?
That was not the rant.
Yeah.
Whatever, I forgot the rant, but it's fine. Let's see if we have any premium board basketball questions before we move into the TDR cocktail break.
Do you know what the mascot for Presbyterian is?
Blue hose.
Blue hose. That is correct.
It's burnt into my memory.
Oh yeah. Trying to think of others. Liberty. You know what Liberty is?
Flames.
The Flames. That is correct.
Okay, so we have some basketball questions. Let's actually go to the TDR cocktail break, and then we're going to hit on all our board questions, and then we'll do the baseball recap. So We're going to do that after. But, Trevor, we're going to talk about the tournament here and the overall bracket and what we discussed last episode. This is going to be a long episode. Screw it. We're having a long episode. There are going to be a lot of short ones this summer. So enjoy it while you can. The tournament. Overall, I'm never one to say this, and I freaking hate when people say this about the tournament. So far been a very boring NCAA tournament. And that's me. It will never disappoint me. I will always love it. It was incredible. Very boring. Not a lot of there were a couple tight endings. Vanderbilt was one of the closest ones. No buzzer beaters in the first round. As I said on last episode, which I gave a much longer and more eloquent reasoning as to why before we had to do 3 takes of it because of the issues we had with StreamYard. I went on a rant at one point that got really chopped down because of our tech issues about I didn't have any seeds higher than a 12 upsetting anyone. It was all 12s and below, 12s and 11s for my upsets this year. And I said, normally I find 3-14 matchups and 4-13 matchups. Even if I'm wrong, I find some that I like. This year, even though I didn't like certain teams as those seeds, I like Purdue, even though Purdue's in the Sweet 16 because they haven't had to face a seed lower than a 12. I just didn't see any this year. And this year we didn't have that. We had 11-6 upsets. We had 12-5 upsets. We had 10-7 upsets. There were no 13-4 upsets or 14-3 upsets, 15-2, 16-1s, and really those weren't that close.
No.
There weren't even there were some that, hung around in the first half, but Lipscomb got blown out. That was a sexy pick.
I was hoping my Bison would get it done. They did look good in the first 4 minutes.
Yeah, Yale hung around with Texas A&M for a little bit, but it really wasn't that close going down to it. Grand Canyon got obliterated. Bryce Drew got destroyed. Texas Tech ended up winning theirs by double digits. Like, there just weren't those normal things you see. Even if there aren't a lot of upsets, there's so many tight matchups. And this year, I think it's due to the transfer portal.
I agree.
I think we've hit a pivotal point where we saw some insane upsets over the last 2 or 3 years where it was peak of that, of guys, of the talent evening out, quote unquote. Now I think it's consolidating more. And I think it's getting worse. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. And I'm hoping next year we have the most insane tournament of all time and this quote looks dumb. But I'm afraid we're getting to the point that, like, you're just not going to see those 14 seed teams that have guys that have been together for 4 or 5 years, like FGCU.
Or like Lipscomb this year.
Or St. Peter's. And Lipscomb's not the best example because those guys weren't uber talented. Like, no offense. I played high school ball with one of the brothers.
You don't want to shout out your boy, Mr. Pruitt?
No, he's a great player, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to be extremely heavily pursued by high major programs. He's going to have some pursuit, but he's not a guy that's like, so the guys I'm talking about are like Florida Atlantic's roster. Their top 3 players from that team that made a run to, what was it, the Elite 8 or Final 4? Their top 3 scorers are all in other programs this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of guys that got pickpocketed.
So I can see their faces. I can't remember their names. But I think you're just not going to see that. Like Belmont. Belmont's key players. Where they're sitting. Maryland. Florida.
Well, last year, Malik Diaz.
But that would have, if they could have kept those guys, they have 3 guys that are playing on teams that have made it either close to or to the Sweet 16. That would have all been on a team like Belmont that would have been the team to make that run. Yeah. I think that is what is gone now. Those players are being scooped up out of the NIT or wherever, and they're going to high major programs, and so that talent's consolidating. Now, will it even out? I hope so, but it's been a very disappointing, boring tournament.
And as somebody who really loves mid-major basketball, it does stink because you know what? Like I like watching Lipscomb play basketball. I like watching Austin Peay play basketball. And it sucks whenever they're not good because like you have a guy like, well, Terry Taylor didn't get taken from Austin Peay, but let's say you have another Terry Taylor at Austin Peay, he's just going to get taken and go to Virginia or something like that. So
Belmont's the best example.
Suck. Yeah, Belmont.
Will Richards.
Oh Lord, I forgot.
Jacoby Gillespie. Like they had Maryland.
That's right.
Belmont is the best example. They have guys that have gone on to be stars at top 4 seeds.
Who's that one kid that went to North Carolina?
Maybe that's Gillespie.
I think
I'm mixing them up. There's another player that transferred. Yeah, he went to UNC. My bad. But there's just a lot of this. So I'll read off the names who were in the Sweet 16: Auburn, Michigan, Duke, Arizona, Ole Miss, Michigan State, BYU paid $7 million to have a dude soak for 6 months on their campus next year. BYU, whatever, dude. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to promote Mormonism. Fucking hate that university. Alabama, Florida, Maryland, Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas Tech, Arkansas. It's not a sexy Cinderella-ridden Sweet 16. I mean, personally,
there are no Cinderellas.
Now,
yeah.
time out. This is where I disagree with people. It's been a boring first 2 rounds. I think this is going to be set up to be the most incredible Sweet 16 and on we've ever seen. So it's oftentimes the issues I have with the upsets. I love them. I love upsets. But at the end of the day, those teams typically get blown out by the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Those sexy teams, there's a week for everybody to rest, cool down, they get destroyed. And it makes for kind of crappy matchups later on. This year, there's none of that. Every single matchup in this Sweet 16, I'm going to be tuned into, and it's going to be electric.
Basketball.
Like, even the only seed that's not basically chalk, I mean, obviously BYU upset Bama. The only double-digit seed you have left is Arkansas. And I am excited to see Arkansas go against Texas Tech.
I think they might win that game.
That's not so actually, I'm very high on Texas Tech. They're an analytical sweetheart.
Yeah.
But they've also they did beat the crap out of Drake. But it's very interesting. We had some of our upset predictions going into the game. I think I had UC San Diego over Michigan. I was close but wrong on that one. I had VC over BYU. I was wrong on that one. I did have number 12 Colorado State over Memphis. And I did have Colorado State going to the Sweet 16, and they should have, because Maryland got the benefit of a walk and a buzzer beater to beat Colorado State. So I'm taking that one as I was almost right. And then my biggest pick that's going to make me lose the bracket challenge, I said Gonzaga was an analytical sweetheart, and if they could get past Houston, they were going to the Final Four. They played Houston down to the wire and should have won that game. They dominated Georgia. So I'm still feeling like I was right on Gonzaga, even though they lost. So overall, I saw somebody that said, if you have a good bracket this year, you don't know ball.
So okay, I want to speak on that because my bracket is already busted. My national title championship winner was St. John's.
I didn't like that pick.
I watch, and this is not a shot at you. This is specifically.
No, you watch more than me.
This is specifically a shot at. I'm in another bracket challenge with my friends Nathan Marbury, who is not a Vanderbilt fan but listens to this pod. Shout out Nathan. I watch more basketball. High level, mid-major, I watch more basketball than almost anybody I know, and my bracket is awful. Like, my bracket is so bad. And Nathan, my homie, who I love you, Nathan, has not watched a lick of basketball this year. He's in, like, the 97th percentile. It makes me so angry.
If you just went through and picked scratch this year, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
And that's what so I actually went through and redid some of my picks because I was like, I have too much scratch.
Yeah.
But it's real. What I think is also happening, we talked about the transfer portal. This is going to be a long episode, whatever. We talked about the transfer portal. I think what's also happening is we're getting so much more data in these analytics. Ken Palm was so right this year.
Evan Maya was very right. Yeah.
It's really crazy because I love Ken Palm. And not just their raw predictions, but how they match up teams and show discrepancies.
It's the duality, man. I'm an Evan Maya man.
Yeah.
Myself.
I've just been loyal to Ken Palm. It's $25 a year.
Yeah.
And I love that dude has never changed his price. He just
shout out to him. Yeah,
$25 a year for the best analytics. Honestly, you're an Evan Maya guy, but best analytics you can find.
No, hey, shout out to
just a simple site, nothing complicated. It's fantastic. Yeah, you don't need a complicated, beautiful layout and GUI. You don't need that. You just need basics.
Is just working on a HTML site from 2001.
But it really was like this year, the matchups, when I looked at them, it was the first year I'd looked at the analytics outside of Gonzaga. It was the only Gonzaga and Colorado State were the only two that jumped out, and McNeese as well. But McNeese, of course, had the Will Wade situation, which made me reverse my pick. We talked about that. But there were only 3 teams that I even identified as underseeded. And normally I can find like 12. And the only other one was Arkansas from my eye test. Their analytics weren't even high. I just knew they were underseeded from how they were playing throughout the year and the talent they had and the injuries they had sustained. So I think it's the analytics are getting better, too. We have so much data.
I think a team that was underseeded that actually was maybe a little bit overseeded, Louisville. I thought Louisville was my darling.
Yeah.
And they got spanked by a bunch of white boys from Omaha.
So it's a funny thing because I think Michigan was one of the most dangerous teams in the tournament too. And I pointed that out, but I also like UC San Diego to upset them. But that's enough general tournament talk. Poor Lipscomb Bisons. I have to also say my Tennessee Tech women's basketball team.
Yeah, how are they doing?
They got sent to the slaughterhouse.
Oh, did they?
You know who their matchup was after having an incredible year, winning, I think, 16 or something crazy. That's not the right number, but a lot of straight games, 16 to 17.
Clues.
You know they drew first round matchup?
I have no idea.
South Carolina.
No, and Dawn Staley.
Yep.
The Grim
Yep.
Reaper.
That's after an incredible year. So they got wrecked. But
did they really?
yeah,
oh
dude.
gosh.
That's not fair. Like,
that's
no,
not fair.
it's just is what it is. They got that draw. I know they have to cheer, but I know their coach went like,
as soon as the camera went off, they were like, "You're shit."
but maybe not even the players, but the coach had to be like, God damn it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, of all there's like 4 programs in college, or 3 in women's college basketball that are truly like you have no chance.
them and UConn.
Just them, UConn, LSU with talent.
yeah.
Like, just in women's, it's not about the coaching or if they're going to win the thing, but it's like there's a pure talent discrepancy in those teams. It's like they could come out, shoot with their left hand, and their size and athleticism is at a whole nother level in a way that does not exist in men's basketball. It would be like a local, like Milligan playing Auburn. It's like those guys, there's no chance.
Swanee.
Yeah, there's just, well, no, I'm meaning like D3. Like,
that school. I honestly thought you just made that school up.
No, I know I have a buddy that played there, but he was actually very good. He was like a 6'4" athletic guard. But I'm saying
Carson Newman.
Yeah, Carson Newman. Shout out to Emmett Robinson, former athlete. But yeah, he's been mentioned twice this episode. He won't listen. But all right, so we are going to go to the TDR cocktail break. Then we're going to answer premium board questions. And then we are going to get into a little bit of baseball before we close it out here. So everybody out there, grab yourself a cold one. And we will be right back after the TDR cocktail break. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break, and welcome back in episode 308 of the Door Report. Trevor, there's one piece of information we forgot to discuss about the transfer portal, and that is the women's basketball portion.
Yes.
Camille Pierre, there were reports, and I will bring up the initial actual person that tweeted it out because, you know, names are names, and they're the person that put out the information.
This person should get shamed.
This is what we try to avoid. We've only ever done it once on TDR regarding a strength coach that we still don't think we even incorrectly reported information necessarily.
I will stand by that. We correctly reported information.
He was meeting.
He was on campus.
Yes, we know that for a fact. But
and people are like, oh, the TDR reporting false information.
No, we don't do that.
No.
Well, we try our best not to. But
do you remember whenever we broke the firing of the OC?
Yes.
Joey,
and hiring.
Shout out Joey Dwyer was like, hat tip TDR. They had it first. That was a surreal moment.
But at EJ Harrow.
Yeah, shame this guy.
At EJJAY Arrow, ARROW. Said sources tell me Camille Pierre intends to enter the transfer portal out of Vanderbilt. The 6'2" forward averaged 20.4 points per game, 9.6 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists, and 2.9 steals per game this season. TDR quoted that, or I quoted it, because I'm the one that tweets from TDR 99% of the time, outside of Phoebe's phenomenal player of the game and diamond dealer. That's Trevor. So if you're ever wondering why I don't tweet more, because most of my tweets are TDR, we quote tweeted, and I said Vanderbilt women's basketball star Camille Pierre to enter the transfer portal. Just off that, I saw other people reporting off this guy's tweet, not just me, so I just assumed. Yeah, there were other people quoting about it. Then about 4 hours after that, I quoted and said, hearing this may be false/incorrect information.
Shout out.
Stay tuned. Alex was asking around, had some good sources. Trevor asked around, had some good sources that have reliably given us information over the years. or over the last year specifically, have
Yeah.
gotten a lot of reliable information that has turned out to be true.
Yes.
That does not mean that every single piece of information we receive from them is going to turn out to be true.
Everything's fluid.
But we trust these sources,
Yeah.
and they're Trevor's sources, and we keep a good distance that way, so it's solid. And Alex has his sources, and they started to inform us that might be false information.
Shout out to Alex for in the group.
He was
chat.
on it quick.
Alex was on it. Alex, before anybody else, like people had thought it was a foregone conclusion. Alex Kerbigov on the board and in our group chat said, "Hey, I'm hearing this is actually a total lie."
Yep.
And informed us and the board, and he was the first on it. So shout out to Alex.
So I have been good about this with the Door Report in the past, but I just saw other people reporting on it, and I didn't want us to be late and seem like we didn't care about women's basketball. If this was men's, I actually would not have done this.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. But I've consistently tried to make it a point that if the player has not personally posted the information about them entering the portal, that I don't buy it necessarily, because there are a lot of people really trying to get clicks with their stupid blue check mark. And that is what I do not want TDR or anything I am involved in to ever become. I don't want to optimize my titles. I don't want to optimize my tweets for clicks. I don't want to do any of that, because that just derails legitimacy.
Yeah.
All of our takes are what we believe and the information we have received. If we are wrong, we are wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not to get you to click on our article and subscribe.
Yeah.
It's not. Like, if we tweet out good information being discussed
Yeah.
or good breaking news kind of inside, that's real.
Yeah.
Like, we have inside info that we know. So
Yeah.
apologies to everybody that saw that initial tweet. I'm sorry I shared that. I wish I would not have, but I tried to correct it as soon as I got differing information.
Well, and let's make a note. Don't beat yourself up too bad. TDR was the first to correct it. TDR was the first to be like, "Hey, we're actually hearing this might not be true."
Yeah, and also it might end up being true.
It might
but
end up being true.
But it's more going on than just she plans to enter the portal.
Yes.
There's a lot more to happen. The portal is chaos, as we keep trying to hit on. The portal's chaos.
Yeah.
And it's perpetual free agency. It's free agency without contracts extending more than a year. It was always flaunted, and it was a benefit to the schools that these scholarships were 1 year. They were renewable year after year, but they were not 4-year scholarships you were signing into. They were 1 year, exactly how your academic scholarships work.
Yeah.
Even if you're offered a 4-year scholarship, it's renewable each year, and you can be denied if you don't meet
if your
requirements.
grades don't- Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how it's always worked. But we don't have to get into this conversation because I don't know how you do it, and it's just going to be running in circles. But there's something, I don't even know how to say this. What we are seeing in college athletics with over 700 players entering the portal on day one, that doesn't even mean all of them are leaving.
Correct.
A good amount of them are probably entering the portal, going to field and see what the interest is, and possibly return to their school.
Yes.
We're going to see that more and more, because, and I'm not going to, I want to shit on the guys. I do. But I'm not going to criticize them, because if the NFL or NBA worked that way, that's what every player would do that had any value. Every year, if they played over what their current valuation at their current team was, and they had 1-year contracts, they'd enter free agency.
Yeah.
Every year. That's why you have contracts and the collective bargaining agreement, and they have to be structured this way, and guaranteed money. That's why it's so complicated. Well, now you're getting agents involved, and they're telling these kids and these college students, I hate calling them kids, but college students, they're saying, enter the portal. Worst case is you can come back to this school that you're already at and get the same money they're offering you now.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that is true. And everybody wants to fix this with regulation. And I gave you this opinion earlier. They want to fix it with regulation. I think that the worms are out of the can. You can't fix any of this with regulation, because the NCAA has no teeth. And if you get into multi-year contracts, it's going to get really, really bad without regulation.
Yes.
Because these are small NIL collectives. And the theory of this is you're paying these guys not for their play, for their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's being lost. This has nothing to do with the play. This is their name, image, and likeness value separated from that. That's what's being lost. I don't think you fix it. I think how you fix it, and fix is a strong word, I think how you get this back in control slightly is it's coaches. Coaches have to say, that's fine, man. If you want to enter the portal, that is totally your prerogative. But you're not coming back here.
Yeah.
And let me be the first to tell you, the portal has been here for a while. You can talk to people that have done it. The grass is not always greener. And in fact, a majority of the time, it is not greener. Even if you're offered an extra 100K, it can ruin your prospects of a future professional career, a la Tyron Lawrence. There are a lot of situations like that. Even if it works out monetarily and you do find a spot at another high major program, your role could decrease, your prospects could decrease in that aspect. And Tyron Lawrence was unique with family stuff, but you're not going to fix it with regulation. Coaches are generally going to have to grow a small backbone and get back to valuing culture within their programs. And we're going to truly find out if individual talent or team culture wins out. I think that's what ultimately this comes down to. And I think it's a mix of both, but you're seeing a lot of teams that had transfers play really well. And it's one of the things I've always said, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. College is a game of getting the best players in. Fuck your X's and O's. That's how it's always been. It's just now we've opened up the floodgates, and now it's like all this bullshit that loves to be talked about by high school coaches is bullshit. The team with the talent wins 99% of the time. Like, you can try hard, you can train hard in the offseason. You ain't growing guys like Janai Broom out of the blue. Those are blue blood, blue chip prospects. And any players like Will Richards, that guy going to Florida, he's a stud. Like, he's a great player. He's a really good player. Florida adding him, it doesn't matter that he didn't build a culture at Florida. He's going to step on the court at Florida, and he's going to be good and improve their team. So basketball is unique because the culture matters less. That's why AAU teams exist. You don't need that same team building aspect. So basketball's screwed. I think that's basketball's screwed. Football, you can have what I'm saying. Basketball's screwed.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, and I don't want to glaze them too much after one good season, but I think a scenario in which you mentioned that you're starting to see teams, or hopefully you'll start to see teams with a backbone. Start to see teams or coaches have a backbone and say, hey, we're going to prioritize culture here. I think to an extent, you might see that with Vanderbilt football.
But football's different.
No. I'm agreeing with you in that. I agree. I think basketball is screwed. I think the name of the game now is you have 1 year assassins.
Yep.
And that's how you win. I think what Vanderbilt football is doing is they're doing a really good job of saying, hey, we got money, but also we have a culture here. And there have been multiple guys on previous teams and this team that have been paid by Vanderbilt, but also been offered lucrative deals by other institutions and possibly turned down bigger bags because they like what's going on at Vanderbilt. I think that is the dichotomy of football and basketball right now. I do agree. Unfortunately, and I think it's bad for the sport, I think basketball, the way you win is by 1 year merchants. I think that's just the name of the game. But also, it's kind of been like that with the one and done. Like if you're your Kentucky's, your Dukes, your UNC's, your Kansas, like it's kind of been like that. You know what I mean? Everybody's just
but the difference is that's not really the teams that have won.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference now. Is it's so prevalent now that like John Calipari won one championship.
Yeah.
Like it is what, like, he revolutionized the sport, but that's not who won. They were the most exciting to watch during the regular season, but the old tale was, it's kind of like what's happening in baseball. The old tale was, that's great, you can have all this fun, you ain't going to win tournament time. Well, now it's happening to such an extreme that you do win during tournament time. But football's different because you do have to have a culture.
Yes.
Like, I played basketball my whole life. If you had an AAU team and you guys were, had the best chemistry, if you played a team that just had elite, better athletes, they just beat you. There's nothing you can do. Basketball is an individual sport. It's a team individual sport.
Where one guy can
exactly. Yep. It's the LeBron James effect. Yeah. It's like you can if you have the best player on the court, by default, most of the time, unless you're playing an elite, you have the best team. And it because the other guys have to defend so much and be so focused on that one player, it makes the other players look so much better. Football is a much more team effect.
Yep.
You can't just be a good wide receiver. You got to have a good quarterback. You can't just be a good quarterback. You got to have a good O-line. You can't be a good running back. You got to have a good passing game, which means you have to have a good O-line. Like, it's so much more complementary versus you just have Cooper Flag. You got Cooper Flag. You got a stud that can put up 30 any given game, and teams have to double team. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, that's where basketball, I think, is screwed.
Yeah.
And not screwed. It's going to be fine for Vanderbilt. Like, Vanderbilt's going to be fine. It's teams like Belmont. It's teams like Lipscomb. It's your mid-majors. The basketball is going to shift way more dramatically
for them
than football did.
I agree.
And you're seeing it the same way with, that's great, but you really got to build a baseball program from the ground up and have that depth of pitching and that depth. Bullshit. You don't have to do that.
No.
You don't have to do that at all. Just bring in studs. That's all you got to do. Just bring in transfer studs that have power from lower tier programs. You'll win a natty. That's modern day. It's the same with basketball now. We will see. That's a little negative view on things, but we have to hit on baseball a little bit because baseball has done some positive things. Yeah. Alex Kurbagov wrote a very good weekend recap article of the Texas A&M series. Texas A&M started out the year pretty highly ranked, I believe.
Number 1.
There we go. I was hoping you would say that.
Number 1. And a dramatic, historic, cataclysmic downfall that we have never seen the likes of in college baseball.
So I was hoping you would say number 1 because I wanted to say something similar to that. Now that said, Texas A&M entered this series unranked. So a lot of talent, a scary team. I would almost draw not the same, but an equivalent in a way to Arkansas. Is a team that has started off slow but has the potential to pick up. Remember, Arkansas started 0-5 in the SEC.
You're talking Arkansas basketball.
Yeah. Sorry.
You were like, I thought you were talking about
no,
Arkansas
my bad.
baseball.
My bad.
Okay, that was my fault.
That's on me. Arkansas basketball.
I agree.
You'd fully shifted
I
into
agree.
baseball mode. I was
with
still
the
in
analogy
transition
you're making.
mode. But a team that started really slow that you could see picking up and making a real run.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of talent. Lumpkin, there's a lot of talent on that
Brazil,
roster.
yeah.
So Vanderbilt won game 1 5-3. I actually put Alex's article into ChatGPT and had it make bullet points off Alex's article by game. So you'll let me know how accurate these are. That's pretty good.
All right.
But
I do read every article posted at TDR.
I obviously read Alex's, but I just wanted to test out this. But
see how far technology has come.
Because my work is trying to use AI, and holy shit, it's
Is it not
awful.
going good?
No, it's just I don't want to comment on it,
Yeah.
but it's like these people can look up my company, and it's nothing they're like pursuing in depth.
Just
It's not like it's utilizing tools.
Yeah.
So I've used AI for personal projects, like not art projects, but like AI for like data cleaning and stuff like that for sports card inventory and stuff. No, not quite that stuff. But AI has really great things it is good at. Data standardization, being able to look through data and give you trends, really good for that. It's so people that don't understand what AI and machine learning and large language learning models are, it's very funny seeing them think what it can do. It's like
we've had this conversation.
Yeah, we have, and I'm not going to get into that, but it's like it could be. I think a lot of these charts, I've seen the comparison to if you ran the numbers on the development and continued IQ of your child from age 1 to age 2 to age 3 to age 5 to age 10, and you said that's the complete exponential growth of how it's going to continue throughout complex problems, this child's going to be a genius and he's going to be 1,000 feet tall.
Yeah.
But once problems become more complex, you reach a threshold. And you don't continue that exponential growth, it levels off. I think that's where we are with AI. But it can do a great job of summarizing Alex's article, which is the point I'm getting to.
I agree. Standardization is very good at. Anything else is pretty bad.
Game 1, Vanderbilt won 5-3. Strong pitching from Sawyer Hawks and J.D. Thompson, says ChatGPT. Riley Nelson went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. Miller Green and Alex Kranzler combined for some key strikeouts late in that one.
Yeah. Shout out to Connor Fennell. Had a really good game. Whenever they announced the pitching rotation, the TDR GC, whenever we saw Connor Fennell was pitching, we were startled.
So in game 2, I did not watch any of these games. I'm gonna level with you. I was watching March Madness. I kept up with what was going on. I didn't watch them. I was locked into the last beautiful stretch of basketball we have. Game 2, Vanderbilt won 3-1. Dominant pitching, limited Texas A&M. J.D. Thompson, that's wrong. J.D. Thompson twice. Miller Green played key roles on the mound.
Strike one, ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT's killing it. Riley Nelson contributed with an RBI. Vanderbilt's defense held strong against the Aggies, so Vanderbilt won game 2 3-1. Game 3, Vanderbilt won 8-5. Braden Holcomb went 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs. Mike Mancini and Brody Johnston each had 3 hits. And this cannot be right. Read what it says based on the pitching staff continued dominance in game 3, striking out 49 batters. Okay.
That's like a perfect game and a half.
Whatever. It's funny. Clearly, I don't know what I was reading on, but Vanderbilt improved to 19-5, 4-2 in conference play. A really strong bounce back performance over the 4 games. Beat Belmont, took care of business in the midweek game, swept Texas A&M, took care of business. Yeah. A team with a lot of talent that's underperformed. Bounced back in the right direction.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if that calms the issues that fans have with this team. If they bounce back and beat Arkansas in this series, it might get you back on board a little bit because
if they take not even sweep, if they take the series against Arkansas, I might be back.
That can open up some things.
Yeah. I will say with this weekend, I thought what was most interesting. A lot of people were highlighting the offensive production. What I thought was most interesting was the pitching. Like we said with Connor Fennell, throwing him out there at game 1. He was pretty nails. He was impressive. Took over the spot for Ethan McElvain. Ethan McElvain did not start this weekend, but you did see him come out of the bullpen. Was shaky to start, but then cheddar in the bullpen from Ethan McElvain. It seems like you don't want to base too much off one appearance out of the pen, but seemed like he got a little bit of confidence back. Like he was making those guys up the plate look silly. So who knows? Vanderbilt's bullpen has not been good, and has been a weakness. But if Ethan McElvain could translate into, an innings-eating guy out of the pen, that could really boost Vanderbilt's odds of winning more games. So you never know.
Yeah, this series just kind of reiterated what I've said since the beginning of the year. I am a way more casual baseball watcher than Trevor. I have not pretended to be anything else. But I looked at the roster, and I said this team's going to be slightly improved from last year. Still not to the standard of a national championship. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what this series felt like to me. They're 19-5, 4-2 so far in the SEC. That can change dramatically. This team feels like a team that's going to host a regional and maybe make a super and get knocked out at that point.
You think they host a regional?
That's where I see them topping. They're making the tournament. They're making a regional 100%. I've said that from the beginning. This is not the team that's going to.
I'm still TBD on that.
Yeah, I don't believe this is the team that's going to stop the streak. I don't think that they've fallen off. They have.
The SEC is so.
I agree.
Tough.
I just think this team's better than last year slightly. Not a lot. 5 to 10% better. And this team last year, 5 to 10% better. They were a 2 seed in a regional last year.
I tell you what, I've said this, and I'll stay on this horse. I love Mike Mancini. I love what Brody Johnston's doing. If Braden Holcomb can finally put it together at the plate, and I think you saw a little bit of flash this weekend. If Braden Holcomb can turn into the offensive producing hitter that Vanderbilt fans and I think this coaching staff think he is capable of, then I will stand by this and say this is a very dangerous team. I think a lot of it rides on Braden Holcomb and his run production. Yeah, the consistency. I've got to see more of that. I'm not like taking anything from the series. I'm just staying by what I said at the beginning. You're still pretty even keel on
this. I think they're going to be at worst case where they were last year, which is a 2 seed in a regional. And I see them hosting a regional as the best case and getting knocked out in a super.
Yeah.
That's my best case scenario for this team. And that's my worst case. I think unlike football, they have a very, very high floor and a very low ceiling. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I view the baseball team. There's not a ceiling. They're not going to win a national championship. I hope this looks really dumb. Clip that.
Yeah.
Make me look dumb.
I hope it looks dumb.
They're
too,
not
yeah.
going to win a national championship. They're not even if by some miracle they made a dome on. They're not making a run there. So, but I don't think they're falling off a cliff. It's why the Corbin discussion is so tough, because the discussion is not about they've become an embarrassment. They've become awful.
No, yeah.
The discussion is Corbin built them up where fans are expecting a natty every 5 years,
Yeah.
or at least being in contention for that. And they're just not there. And I don't see anything so far, even with this sweep, that shows me they're up there with the level of the Tennessee right now.
Oh God,
they're up there with Florida right now. I don't see it.
No,
and
I agree.
They're on a different level. Now, Vanderbilt's still a top 20 team, in my opinion, top 25 team. They're just not the top 5 team like they used to be. There used to be a gap between Vanderbilt and everyone. It was like watching Alabama football at their peak under Saban play against everyone else. It was like, even if they lose, this team has the best players. And I don't feel that anymore. They have really good players, and they have some really great players. R.J. Austin, they've got Brody Johnston, but they don't have consistently that talent discrepancy between the teams they're playing.
They don't have the Xander Wheels.
Nope.
They don't have the Kendalls. They don't have
on the mound. They don't have the Kumar Rockers, the Jack Lighters. They don't have those guys. Both on the Rangers now.
But both starting
Yep.
day roster in the 5-man rotation. So, and I don't want to get off on a tangent. A lot of people buried Jack Leiter. I don't know if you guys follow Jack Leiter in the minors. He was really bad, and a lot of people were like burying him. I said this all along. I think the Texas Rangers mismanaged him, and they brought him up too quick and really set him back. Now that they've given him a chance to kind of restart, and they've seen what he's done in spring training, they're like, oh, this he's what we thought he would be. So shout out Jack Leiter for battling adversity. Shout out Kumar Rocker for battling
big
adversity
time battling
as well.
adversity.
Man, played some indie ball after getting screwed by the Mets.
Yep.
And turns out they're like, oh wow, he's also what we thought. So shout out to the Rangers, 2 great pitching prospects.
That's why the Mets are a poverty franchise.
Even with Steve Cohen, the richest man in baseball, my best friend Andy thinks that they probably are going to get a wild card even with Juan Soto.
Jesus Christ, poverty franchise. But that's about all the baseball talk. That's all the portal talk, basketball talk. Next week, we are going to do a full season recap on basketball. Trevor, you got something?
Before we get to the board question, I just want to ask you one question. A yes or no. Do you think Vanderbilt gets their brains beat in this weekend by Arkansas?
I think they lose the series 1-2.
I think it's really ugly this weekend.
Okay, so it's almost like how we view the team. I think that I think brains, they could get. I don't think they'll get swept. You think they'll get swept?
I think they could get swept.
I think they go 1-2, and I think they get beat badly in one of those games, and I think they win a tight 1-1. And if they get swept, I can see it.
Yeah.
But I don't see them winning the series. If they win the series, my perspective on this team changes a bit.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
So let's get to these board questions because we're already pretty deep into this episode. Here we go. And we might have answered some of these. Usually we go to these earlier. I meant to go to these earlier. Off topic. It's crazy how the SEC has played the NCAA like a fiddle to get this many teams into the tournament. And what's crazier is we are linchpin for this. 2022-23. Vanderbilt 7-6 in non-con, 11-7 in conference, misses tournament. 2022-23, Mississippi State 11-1 non-con, 8-10 in conference, makes tournament. SEC heard them loud and clear and said, schedule crap non-conference games. Got it. We'll get our Q1 wins in conference. I'll agree with that.
I'll agree, and I think
they found the flaw.
And I think that's how you should schedule.
They found the flaw for teams that play in elite conferences.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's true. They found the flaw. Off on topic, have we ever had a football/men's/women's basketball teams make as much noise as we did this year? I'm not talking the one-off seasons from basketball or the Jimmy Frank years, which for what it's worth, he never had a season where we made noise on a national level like this year. Like all 3 sports were getting featured on national spotlight social media posts every week, it seemed. No. Vanderbilt's never had the personalities or anything like they've had in football ever, even in the James Franklin era. No. They've never had anything like Pavia, where randoms completely know who he is. Jordan Matthews, probably the best player in Vanderbilt football history. Yeah. he didn't have
He
the
didn't have the personality.
he didn't have the national media attention grabbing level that Pavia has, and a lot of that is Vanderbilt football's never had a win like they did against Bama.
You're forgetting someone from those teams. Blake Fromming.
Blake Fromming, legend.
had, dude.
What charisma!
I'm not throwing a shot at Blake. This is from getting to know Blake as like a friend in real life. Blake Fromming James Franklin missed, and Derek Mason missed a huge opportunity by not putting him in front of a microphone every chance they got. He would have been a star. He would have been a star.
So, no, I don't think so at all. I don't know if you've ever 2012 things were churning as well as they are now or better, but it just was different. It wasn't as flip of a switch, things are trending up.
Yeah.
It was a lot slower, not as much star power. This is a big inflection point for Vanderbilt athletics right now. This is a huge next 6 to 8 months for Vanderbilt athletics. I think the start of football season is huge. This program can gain legitimacy. If they start out winning, this program skyrockets into the national spotlight. If they start out sucking, now it's going to be an embarrassment in the national spotlight. They're going to get attention, for better or for worse, going into the season. They have one of the biggest names in the SEC, in the country, in college football. They have one of the biggest names in all of college football in Diego Pavia. They have the best tight end in the country. Literally. I don't use hyperbole. I use it. I'm not using it right now. The objective sites, Eli Stowers is the best returning tight end in the country. Number one. And it's not close by grades, by everything. He's number one.
Like, think about this. And this is not hyperbole either, because check the stats last year. Vanderbilt, as crazy as this, and I don't think I've heard anybody say it like this. And you might be saying, oh, you're pumping smoke. Vanderbilt has a Heisman contender returning to this football team. A man that, for better or for worse, however you want to dice it up, was at one point last year in the Heisman running, returning to play football.
So I will say,
Just take it. Don't rain on my parade. Will.
No, I'm not raining on. So this is the only time, truly, and I'm not. He's not going to lie, but this is the only time Vanderbilt has ever had a guy that's even a possibility in the modern era.
What do you define modern?
The last 50 years, 40 years. Since 1970.
No, Eric Mitchell in the late 80s was a Heisman candidate.
Okay. But, I guess I'm more saying like Heisman, yes. Vanderbilt right now is a guy that could be on the cover of College Football 26. Yes. And they've never had a star like this in the modern era. And
he's bigger than Jay was.
And right now, we'll say modern era, we'll say the last 30 years. We'll say since 1992 or something, or 1994, whatever it is. They've never had a guy that, if he comes out and performs well, like 10% above expectations, he's going to be in that discussion.
Yes.
It's undeniable he will be. Now, he's not going to win it. It is what it is. But yeah, that's real for the first time ever. And it's crazy. It's not going to happen. We're blowing smoke. But yeah, it's the first time Vanderbilt's had a real star in our lives. Jay Cutler was a star, but that's because he was so damn good in a first-round pick. They've never had a real college star. Like somebody that if Vanderbilt comes out and starts out 3-0 and Pavia puts up insane numbers and gets some highlight plays,
we're on game day.
They're going to be they're going to be highlights shown on SportsCenter. Like, it is what he's going to be, a draw.
He's going to be the next Max Duggan.
They've never had that before. And it's something, and he can come out and shit the bed. I don't see it happening, but it's a possibility. Eyes are going to be on Vanderbilt and their expectations for the first time in a long time. And that's a blessing.
It's so weird.
We talk about so consistently the subtle disrespect of low expectations. Vanderbilt's not got that this year.
No.
So moving on to the next question from Stackhouse's Burner. He says, number one, Hogard not being in at the end of the game. We talked about that. I disagree with it. I think Hogard should have been in, but I understand why he did it. So next, number two, said, who on this team would you want to keep considering the amount of talent in the portal and an improved NIL budget?
Dev McLaughlin. And Tyler Nickel.
To be honest, Tyler Nickel's number one. I would like to keep as many as possible.
I agree.
There, besides JQ, Karras, Bilal, you have the guys graduating like Hogard, Huffman. I would love to have Magnon back, but he's like the only one graduating that I want back. To be honest, is Magnon.
Yeah.
You have enough guys graduating. You're going to have enough bottom tier guys transferring out like JQ Roberts and Karras Bilal. I would like to maintain as many as possible. Now, I don't know. They might lose a key guy. Somebody might enter the portal that's testing out the market, but I'd like to keep as many as possible.
Yeah.
Portal scoops. We will keep those going. Check our
Those
Twitter.
are on the board. Those are on the board.
Those are on the board. We're doing our best. And number 4 is baseball turning a corner. This weekend's a test. TBD, this weekend's a real test, but possibly this weekend's a test. Moving on to the next one. Are we the Drake/St. Mary's of college football? It's interesting that our basketball team tries to speed teams up and strike fast, while our football team slows the game down and elongates drives. Do these divergent approaches represent respective differences in the sports? Differences in the state of the programs, or are they just curiosities? I think that's legit.
What a wonderful question.
That's beautiful.
That's an insanely good question. Who asked that?
Pepperdor.
That's a great question.
Yes.
And I think both respective teams doing that is to maximize or minimize their deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the basketball team minimizes their deficiencies is by speeding it up. The way the football team minimizes their deficiencies is by slowing it down.
But I will say what I like where he's drawing is basketball has the capability of recruiting to their style. Basketball can recruit to what they want at Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Mark Byington can recruit guys he wants. Football is forced to adopt a unique style, similar to Drake and St. Mary's.
They've got to moneyball it.
They're forced to adopt a different style. So I love that.
That's a great question.
I really do like that. I would say, yeah, that's pretty. I would say St. Mary's is yes. That's a good example.
Yeah, I that's a great analogy in that, or draw on that. Vanderbilt is the St. Mary's of college football.
There were a couple of responses, and then somebody asked, who was Chef Miller, one of our writers, Miller McKee, said, "Is anything worth loving anymore?"
Do we want to give the context in which that is? No, because it's all
we'll see.
Say.
It's transfer portal stuff.
Miller, it's brother. Trust me, I love you to death, man. It's going to be okay.
But somebody responded to that and said Miller Burgers on a fall Saturday in Lot 2.
Speaking of Miller Burgers, it was so funny. He called me whenever he was in Cleveland for the round of 64. And he said that people who were like a part of the listen to the TDR universe and on the board and Twitter came up to him and were like, "Oh, so you're Chef Miller. What restaurant are you a chef at?" And they thought he was like a real chef. And he's like, "Oh no, I just cook for the tailgate. They call me Chef Miller." He's like, "My restaurant is Lot 2." So like, I'm not a professional cook.
Another question here is, how much would you pay each player to return? Assuming we have $6.5 million to work with, that's a high estimate, but $6.5 million to work with. At what point would you let each player walk in terms of money?
Fascinating.
I.e., we let Edwards walk if he asks for $1.5 million.
Do you want me to answer this?
I can start out.
Because I have an answer. I just don't know if I should answer.
We know basically confirmed, not fully, but basically based on rumors that A.J. Hogard is being paid $800,000 as the highest paid player on this roster. The market's going to be inflated for the next 2 to 3 years. This is not an exception this year. I would say absolute top tier for a 5'9" guard that shot under 43%, that shot 43% from the field and under 36% from three, and is a volume shooter. You're maxing out at $1 million. If he wants more than that, tell him good luck.
Do you even feel like $1 million is too much?
It is too much. Okay, but in this, that's what I'm kind of getting at is the inflated market. It is what it is. But a player like Jason Edwards is much more easily replaceable than a guy like Tyler Nickel. Even though Jason Edwards is a bigger piece and a more key contributor to the scoring, a 6'7", 6'8" 3 who is a knockdown shooter is much more tough to replace than a 5'9" guard that tries to drive in consistently and is a volume scorer. Those are all over the country at mid-major programs. You have to basically decide, do you want the proven guy that knows he's a volume, he's a volume scorer and he can do it. He's not great, he's good.
Yeah.
Or do you want to try out a guy that's a fifth the price and build up everything around him? Because right now you can find a guard, not exactly, because he had great games. He led this team in scoring. He's the best player on the team. I'm not wanting to lose that in this. But you can find a guy who can basically fill that role for around $200,000 in the transfer portal. 5'9" guards who are volume shooters are not a high value commodity. Posts with size and skill, large shooting small forwards, those are value.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to find a 6'3", 6'4" guard that shoots about that would cost you
Big money.
$500,000.
It's the reason they paid AJ Hogard so much. That's a primary ball handler that's 6'3", 6'4", that's a good defender. No, not a dime a dozen. The opposite of that. Very valuable. Jason Edwards is more the dime a dozen.
Is dime a dozen? Does
that
mean
they're
valuable?
No, that means they're not. They're throwaway.
Oh, damn.
Dime a dozen's throwaway. But yeah,
a quarter for one.
The issue I have with Edwards, he's a great offensive player. He gets in trouble driving. I talked about that. He's an awful defender. Like the worst defender on the team. Like an absolute liability. You have to adjust your substitutions and rotations because he's such a bad defender. And that's where it's tough to pay a guy that much. That's like he's a liability. He's not just average. He's bad defensively. Teams take advantage of him in conference play defensively.
Would you pay nickel a mil?
No. None of these individual players are worth that on this roster right now. Okay. No, not even close.
I just wanted to gauge where you were at.
No, right. Vanderbilt doesn't have an irreplaceable star on their roster. Jason Edwards is the best player on this team, best scorer. I want him back. I want everybody back. No one on this roster is irreplaceable. Absolutely no one.
I would agree with that.
And that's where it's a little bit different is Vanderbilt football has irreplaceable guys on the roster right now. Yeah. I don't believe they have that with basketball. And the difference with basketball is I think they have the resources to replace guys. You saw them do it this year, bringing in a whole new roster. I think they can replace these guys with the same or better players. So I think these guys need to be very careful with what they're doing in the transfer portal.
And we'll tease it because we've made note of it on the board. Sources indicate to us that Vanderbilt basketball has a war chest. It's even public in that Mark Hubbard, with the matching that he was doing to Vanderbilt basketball, in a span of 72 hours, they raised $3 million for just basketball. So Vanderbilt's NIL for basketball is doing pretty well, and that's putting it lightly.
I'm not going to read the rest of these questions because they're talking about a tailgate that we might not be having because of schedule. There's a possibility we have a tailgate on Friday evening during/before the Vanderbilt Arkansas game this weekend on the series. We don't know. The schedule might not work out for us. We're going to try. But yeah, that's all the questions here. The one thing I want to talk about where you said the NIL war chest, there's some other sites that cover Vanderbilt that are putting out things that say Vanderbilt's still way behind, dead last in the SEC, way behind 16 out of 16. It's not even close. That's wrong. That's wrong.
It's just we don't want to say anything.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not trying to start a war. But it's wrong.
False. Yeah.
If you were subscribed to the other one, it's wrong. They're wrong. And it's not saying Vanderbilt's top 10 or top 5. They're not, even if they might be 16 out of 16. They're not leagues behind the SEC. They're not. They're very competitive, very close. It's not saying they're exceeding the other ones, but what we have seen them do and perform and do in the transfer portal, they are clearly not working from a 80% disadvantage. They're maintaining guys. They're bringing in talented rosters. There's a reason Vanderbilt has had the success they have had in men's basketball and football over the last year. It's because they're not lagging behind in NIL resources. Yeah. And they maintained Pavi. They maintained Stowers. They brought in 11 new scholarship players through the transfer portal. The NIL chest is there. The NIL war chest is there. Is it going to be able to compete with top-tier programs? No, it's not. But it's not so far behind that Vanderbilt has to have a woe is me attitude. No.
Yeah, it's not so far behind that you should expect Vanderbilt to go 2-10.
No, absolutely not. So
it's to the point now to where, and we'll go on record and say, it is to the point now that specifically in football, bowl games should be the expectation, and for basketball, tournaments should be the expectation.
As it should always be.
It is to that point to where that should be the benchmark.
But Vanderbilt has in baseball Eastern Kentucky tonight, such as going on right now, and this weekend has Arkansas, a big matchup. I have to pee really bad.
Yep.
So any last thoughts you have on episode 308 before we close it out?
We said it was going to be short, and it's about.
It's not short at all.
It might be an
It's
hour
gonna-
45.
Yep, it's going to be a long episode. So for myself, Will Byrum, and my co-host Trevor Hulan, this has been episode 308 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collectibles.